Talk some numbers now, and economists say the slight uptick in jobs doesn't change the fact that South Africa has an unemployment crisis. Statistics South Africa says non-agricultural formal sector employment grew by 22,000 jobs in the first quarter of this year. Total employment increased by 76,000 jobs between March 2018 and March 2019. However, part-time employment dropped 4.9% as businesses cut costs. To unpack these figures, I'm joined this morning by Econometrics Chief Economist Azar Jammine. Azar, good morning.
Good morning.
So we were just chatting just before we started the interview about these numbers and very interesting observations from you.
Yes, there are two sets of employment surveys. The one is the quarterly labour force survey that is conducted amongst 30,000 households. And those figures were released 6 weeks ago and showed that for the first quarter of 2019, 126,000 jobs were lost in the formal sector on a quarter-on-quarter basis, and 135,000 were lost on a year-on-year basis. Even excluding the formal sector alone and looking at all jobs, there were job losses over the course of the year. These figures that were released yesterday are the quarterly employment survey conducted not amongst households but amongst registered businesses, and they're the ones that showed an increase in employment. So there's a mismatch between the results of the two.
So what's the real story then?
Who knows what the real story is? A lot of the problem in terms of the mismatch arises from statistical techniques, which are the standard statistical techniques based on sampling, which arrives at a variance of possible outcomes, and the media and Stats SA pick on the mean, the balance between the two extremes of the possible outcomes, and say that's what's happened to the number of jobs changed. But it could have been on either extreme of the mean. So it's very difficult to be convinced of whether there were job gains or job losses in the first quarter.
Okay, well that complicates things, doesn't it, for us? So as far as you know, where do we stand at the moment?
But either way, even if you take the positive figures that were released yesterday, there was still an increase of just 76,000 jobs in the economy first quarter of last year to first quarter of this year. That is an increase of 0.8%, which is way below the population growth rate. And if you bear in mind also that there are 300,000 to 400,000 people coming into the job market every year, you really need to have jobs growth of at least 3% a year in order to accommodate those entrants. So otherwise your unemployment rate is going to
So it's not even making a dent anywhere?
No. So yes, it may have been better news than we had 6 weeks ago, but it's still not good enough.
Okay, so I suppose we are expecting to hear from the President again today. He's going to respond to the state of the debate on his State of the Nation address. I'm wondering if, you know, what he's going to say about unemployment today, or the criticisms that were levelled against him yesterday.
All he can say is that he's determined to change this around, and there are structures and policies at hand that will turn this around. But you know, we've been waiting and waiting. Until when will we wait to see this? And unfortunately, the policies that he wants to implement to turn this around are opposed by many within his own party.
And more we are seeing that businesses are scaling down. We even had Denel employees, I suppose, in a bit of a panic yesterday as well about salaries and things like that, just as examples of what we're seeing. So whatever gains we might make, somebody still is going to pay the price for that at some point.
Unfortunately, that is the reality. And when you've got very powerful trade unions who just keep going for broke in terms of pay increases, that businesses really can't afford in this kind of environment. The businesses are going to close down, or they have to scale back on the number of people they employ.
What are you seeing happening out there in terms of businesses scaling down? Where are we seeing the most drastic cuts?
The most drastic job cuts, I think, are, well, the big businesses are cutting back jobs in order to just stay on the roll. But the real job losses are happening with small businesses going under.
Yeah, entire businesses closing down.
Yeah, small businesses, you know, employing 5 or 10 people, can't carry on anymore, just close down. And those figures are hardly even measured in these data.
And so much for asking people to take their entrepreneurial skills out there and make it happen.
Yeah, how
does that happen?
I mean, it's a real challenge. Yes, there are comments that said most of the billionaires in America were made during the Great Depression. but that's America.
Yeah,
with all our labor laws, etc., and all our regulations, it's extremely difficult for entrepreneurs to start up businesses and actually get going. And also, the critical thing is the lack of proper education and skills amongst so many in this country who cannot add value in a way that makes them employable.
Okay, so either way you look at it, we are still in a very bad place. We are still in that crisis.
This is a crisis.
It still is a crisis. Okay, I'm not going to say thank you for that, Azar Jameen. You're not the bearer of great news this morning, but thanks for coming in this morning. Azar Jameen, Chief Economist at Econometrics.